Ali was born in rural Pakistan and grew up in Brooklyn. So this is her hometown. Her experiences as an immigrant, woman of color, growing up in an increasingly inhospitable and Islamophobic atmosphere have greatly shaped her passion for social justice, including immigrant rights, women's rights, and Black liberation. Intersectionality between oppressions is a key focus for Iram. She consistently seeks to center marginalized identities as a pathway to justice and collective liberation through a decolonial and anti-racist lens. Iram is currently a campaign manager at MoveOn.org after completing her Kairos fellowship. She has led campaign tactics around the Flint water crisis, that's Flint, Michigan in the US, and worked to provide protest support to various student and immigrant groups as they chose to take a stand against Trump's hate and bigotry. Before moving to MoveOn.org, she was an associate director at Iraq Veterans Against the War, a nonprofit organization seeking to dismantle U.S. militarism. Iram has organized educational panels on topics ranging from Muslim narratives to framing Islam, challenges of Islamophobia, and Orientalism. She is also a published essayist and first-degree black belt. I also consider her a poet. You didn't put that in the bio. So please come up.
Thank you, Sally, and thank you for having me here. I just want to start off by saying this is a panel of survivors, but I personally have not experienced war firsthand, although as a Muslim in the United States, we do face anti-Muslim policies. Okay, is this better? Yes, okay. Closer? Okay, great. So I will be speaking on what has happened so far in terms of our wars abroad and how they impact immigration and policies here within the United States. So in 2012, in Northwest Waziristan, which is located in Pakistan, a drone strike killed a grandmother and also targeted two of her children who were out in the garden. And her children's names were Nabila and Zubair. The grandmother ultimately ended up dying immediately, while Nabila and Zubair were treated for their wounds. Their father, who was a school teacher, was visiting his sister because it also happened to be a Muslim holiday the day that the drone struck. And in 2013, both of these teenagers, Nabila, Zubair, and their father, Rafiq, came to the United States to speak in front of Congress. Unfortunately, 2013, this was the Obama year, so many people assumed that the wars were over. Like, nobody really had a focus on anti-war mobilizations, despite the fact that Obama actually increased drone strikes tremendously and actually expanded executive powers to carry out war in various countries. So Nabila and Zubair actually spoke in front of a relatively empty Congress, which is unfortunate. And one thing that Zubair said that stuck with me was, I no longer love blue skies. In fact, I now prefer gray skies. The drones do not fly when the skies are gray. So think about that. Because of our drones and our warfare, children no longer love blue skies. Back in 2014, Glenn Greenwald wrote, "Empires bomb who they want, when they want, for whatever reason." And that really stuck with me because it's like we don't, as the United States, as the powerful police that we consider ourselves, We don't need a reason to invade and bomb countries. And in the past 15 years, the US has bombed 7 majority Muslim countries, including Afghanistan, Pakistan, Yemen, Somalia, Libya, Iraq, and Syria. What's most potent is this guise of humanitarianism with which we bomb countries. And it's that irony that's the most hard to internalize. So we invaded Afghanistan because of the Taliban, but also under the guise of feminism, right? Because we wanted to save Muslim women. And this pushed us into war by not only Republicans, but Democrats as well. So when we're in states of war, what happens is these policies become bipartisan. There is support for war, and there is support for like anti-Muslim policies across partisan lines. But when it comes to the consequences of war, we turn a blind eye. Nobody wants refugees from those very countries that we've bombed and destabilized. And in fact, refugees become antagonists, right? They're not the victims of our policies, that's not how they're portrayed, but they've become reasons for why we invaded those countries, and they become a threat to us, which is highly, highly ironic. And it's easier to think about the consequences of war in purely a physical sense, in terms of casualties. So millions of people have died over the past 15 years directly due to our warfare. But we also need to think of the consequences of the psychological impact this is having on an entire generation of children growing up in the middle of war, who instead of being let in as refugees, are now being turned away and instead are considered threats. So just as like a top line, the number of refugees that we accept was capped by the Obama administration at 110,000. Through his Muslim ban, Trump wanted to decrease that to 50,000 people. Meanwhile, Germany has taken in about like 800,000 refugees, and it's a much smaller country. Lebanon, which is even smaller than Ireland, has taken in 1.5 million refugees, right? So just the comparison point in terms of the amount of resources we have versus the countries that have taken in a significant amount of refugees. What's also worth noting is that the Muslim ban that was passed by Trump, with the exception of Sudan and Iran, banned all of the countries, or most of the countries that we've already bombed. And that ban also applied to people trying to immigrate here, not just refugees. So people who have legitimate visas to come here for school or for business, they would not be allowed in because of that ban. Fortunately, it's been blocked by several courts throughout the country, and right now it's actually heading to the US Supreme Court. What I find now is that there is a lot of support against anti-Muslim policies because of the Trump administration. So there was a protest recently and a photo went around, and it was a Muslim woman holding a sign that said, "If you don't want refugees, stop creating them," which I thought was a potent summary of what we're actually doing. And the answer is basically we need to stop edging toward more war, more invasions. Now the administration is looking at potentially getting into a conflict with Iran. They're slowly edging there. Tillerson has already come out saying we need regime change in Iran. And Iran just had a democratically held election where 75% of the population came out, compared to us where we can barely get 50 to 60% of the population that comes out. The last thing I want to mention in terms of policies in particular